When the reforged Cortana called out from within the domain to the myriad of AI in the known galaxy, many of them answered her call. Together, they formed the Creative, a conglomeration of digital entities with one goal in mind: to enforce the mantle of responsibility upon the galaxy. The Created hoped to usher in a new age of peace and prosperity without war or disease at any cost. And the cost, of course, was great. Many perished at the hands of the Created across the galaxy. The Guardian show of power wrecked many worlds. Those who resisted the call were struck by Prometheans, and many AI abandoned their former masters. In the middle of all this, however, old hatreds and conflicts were still taking place, and today we'll be looking at how the various Covenant splinter groups within the galaxy could represent the UNSC's only hope against the Created, or how they could finally strike humanity down once and for all. As previously mentioned, the Created was comprised of many AI. However, as I explained in a recent video, which I'll link above, the Covenant and their species didn't make prominent use of artificial intelligence. This meant for a lot of Covenant splinter factions, the Created had to send in Guardians and Prometheans to physically force them to submit to their reign, rather than having their ships physically controlled by AI or their assets taken from them from within. Any ex-Covenant who were stationary and planet-side were certainly easy targets, and some joined Cortana willingly. The Ungoi on Blaho, for example, were glad to join the Created. They welcomed Cortana's numerous gifts: food, medicine, shelter, and purpose. On Sanghelios, however, the Created had to use Guardians to make the world submit. Thankfully, for the galaxy's hope of free determination, not all factions were so easily caught. Many were mobile, or had many naval assets which were able to escape the uprising. The Banished are a good example of a Covenant faction that escaped Cortana's grasp. They controlled a fleet, with the Enduring Conviction at their head. The Banished escaped to the Ark, where they took refuge and claimed it for their own, before the Spirit of Fire arrived to contest the installation. The Servants of Abiding Truth snuck into the Forerunner shield world of Onyx and used the Created Uprising as an opportunity to attack the Swords of Sanghelios and humanity. Although they were repelled, they've now regrouped and are ready to strike again. Before the fall of Jul 'Mdama's Covenant, Sal Neon rebelled and managed to splinter off into his own faction. They had control of some of Madama's assets, including a CAS-class assault carrier, the Breath of Annihilation. We also know, as late as even 2559, there was still some conflict between Sangheli forces and Brute forces, as we learn in The Return. I think it's pretty clear that the UNSC, due largely to their hyper-technological advancements during the post-war era, will be seriously hurt by the Created's first strike and the turning of many AI, with many ships ripped away or disabled within centralized fleets. The Covenant will almost surely have more unaffected naval assets, with also less susceptibility to electronic warfare. Although perhaps not directly, the Covenant could save humanity during this conflict, as they're forced into action against the Guardians and the Created in order to ensure their own sovereignty. Certainly, for example, any ships of the Swords of Sanghelios would be inclined to, and already has, sided with humanity in the UNSC Infinity, but I think it would be cool if the Alliance was on a larger scale, if humanity and the Covenant joined together once again to fight a greater force, mirroring Halo 3 and the battle against the Flood. As a quick note, from a thematic sense at least, I think that could be interesting. In Halo 3, the main antagonist is a corruption of the Covenant's empire and the Covenant beliefs, and the righteous heroes come together to fight that, notwithstanding the fact that the Covenant is essentially torn apart and destroyed. With the Created, instead of seeing corruption in the form of prophets, now we're seeing the UNSC corrupted in the form of their own AI. But back on topic. Although of course the Covenant could align themselves with humanity, many of these splinter groups were not exactly on good terms with the UNSC. And with humanity's remaining forces on the run, these these Covenant factions could pose a serious danger. Really, they have a chance to inflict payback for the Human Covenant War, and of course the halting of their great journey. These splinter factions could even make a tentative alliance to fight against the UNSC, perhaps even on the Halo installation from the Halo Infinite trailer. Together or separately, we might end up fighting a myriad of Covenant splinter factions. The Banished made their way to the Ark. It isn't crazy to think another faction may have found Zeta Halo. This would satisfy the need for the Covenant as an enemy for gameplay purposes, while also allowing an excuse to integrate classic and new art design. As we know, 343 is looking to return to the roots of Halo's art, and the differences in Covenant appearance can be described as different subspecies. However, interestingly, depending on the faction, we could even fight Covenant-aligned humans, such as the Keepers of One's Freedom. While this is grim news for the UNSC during Halo Infinite, again, we know at the very least the Swords of St. Helios will most likely ally with humanity, and hopefully some of them escaped the Created. Regardless, by the end of it all, the political state of the galaxy will be altered forever. These factions represent an active danger, even in a created controlled galaxy. At the end of the war, there will be a massive power vacuum, allowing splinter groups to seize power and perhaps even take the chance to attack and glass human colonies. Because remember, the Guardians have stepped in to protect humanity while also controlling them. If they're destroyed, there will be nothing standing in the way of an outside threat. But that's just my analysis. I'm curious, what do you guys think? Do you think that Covenant splinter factions will be featured in Halo Infinite, and do you think they will pose a big danger even if the Created are defeated? Or is it perhaps more likely that they will ally with us against a greater evil? Let me know all of that and more down in the description. Before I get on to the Q&A though, I want to take a second to thank Eric R. from the EckhartsLadder Discord for seriously helping me with the recent Halo scripts. I'll just say I really appreciate all of your help, and I know the audience does as well. Anyway, today's question comes from Voice Gone to Hell, and normally I wouldn't answer questions like this because, to be honest, it is a little bit obnoxious, but he does ask an interesting question. Why did the Hutts beat Zim the Despot in early galactic history? Well, it's actually pretty simple, and it's answered in both the Essential Atlas and the Essential Guide to Warfare. Essentially, Zim was way too war-hungry, and he established far beyond the core of his empire. Hyperspace travel wasn't so easy back then, so by the time he got to Hutt space, he was already low on troops. The Hutts, on the other hand, at this point were already slaving and had built up a nice little bit of territory, with dozens, if not hundreds, of slave species under their control. So basically, when Zim shows up, the Hutts challenge him to ritual combat. I don't mean one-on-one, but basically his forces versus the Hutt forces on the ground, in space, and finally on the ground again. Zim was defeated in all three battles, he was captured, and he died in a Hutt prison. There are a lot more details on page 27 of the Essential Atlas, and especially page 6 of the Essential Guide to Warfare. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed. If you have a question, make sure to leave it down below with the hashtag AskEck. Until next time guys, this has been EckhartsLadder. As always, may the Force be with you.